Hello everybody, and welcome to a new batch of tutorials. These tutorials will revolve around Apple's XCode application, as well as their new programming language Swift. We're going to start off by creating a Hello World application. This is quite simple, but it will get you just a little introduction to what's going on in XCode. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going to create a new XCode project. This will open up a window known as Choose a Template for your new project. We're going to stick with iOS. We're going to stick with the Application tab. And we're going to go to Single View Application. After that, go ahead and click Next. And we're asked for a product name. The product name is also basically the application's name. So I'm just going to type in Hello World. The organization name here is the name of your company. The organization identifier is how the App Store will end up knowing it is your application under your company's name. So for example, if you have a company and you also have an application called Hello World, this is how Apple will end up differentiating both of our applications without having a problem. And the bundle identifier below the organization one is basically the organization identifier combined with your product name. And that's what Apple will see on their App Store. The language here is Swift. For those of you that like Objective-C, you can left click here and switch back to Objective-C. And down here, we're going to stick with iPad for our devices because the class that I'm teaching uses them rather than iPhones. So after that is done, you'll click on Next. And that will give you one more option. And this option is just a file browser where you're going to save your project. So I'll end up making sure I'm on my desktop. And then instead of creating a new folder, I'm just going to hit create because it'll automatically create a new folder called Hello World for me. Now after that, we'll end up having our main window open up. And this is what the inside of XCode looks like at first. We're not going to concentrate too hard on everything quite yet. What we're actually going to concentrate on is to the left side of the screen, which is your file browser over here. And we're going to go to this one called app.delegate.swift. And by left clicking on it, it will end up bringing up code in the middle of our screen. Now this is just basic framework code that's already with the application being specified which template we chose earlier. We chose a single view application, so it gave us this default app.delegate.swift file. So what we're going to do is we're going to search through the code here. And on line 18, you'll see that it says override point for customization after application launch. We're actually going to erase that, and we are going to type in println, so P-R-I-N-T-L-N. That stands for print line. We're going to do an open parentheses, open quotation marks, double quotation marks by the way, and then we'll type in the words hello world, followed by closing quotation marks and a closing parentheses. By doing so, we should be able to run this program and see it work. Now, two things. First off, the way that we wrote this program, it's not going to show up on the actual simulator, but it will show up on the console menu. So we're going to want to make sure we go to the top right here, and there's this little switch that looks like a bar, a black bar, at the bottom of a white square. We're going to left click on that, and that's going to open up this bottom area. Now to the bottom right is where we should see Hello World if it works correctly. The second thing we have to do is we're going to change our specific iPad. At the college we have iPad Retinas, so I'm going to switch to iPad Retina. And then I'm going to click on Run. Now when I click on Run, a few things is going to happen. First off, a big black window is going to show up, and this is going to be the iOS simulator. This is basically trying to process what we've created in our application so far through our computer rather than trying to debug it through our own device at the time being. The second thing that might happen is, depending on how long it runs, it might possibly crash, or it might end up telling me that I have an error. So let's just be ready for all of those things. Let's go ahead and left click. You'll know that it's running the application because it'll say that it's building over here. And in a few seconds, you'll probably see the window totally fill my screen up. And if it doesn't fill the screen up, that means that the iOS simulator might be running in the background of the computer for the time being. So you'll know right now that at the top it does officially say that we're running Hello World on iPad Retina. So that tells me there's a good chance the simulator is actually behind my application. So what I would do is I would go down to my dock, and down in my dock I have this little thing that looks like the XCode application, but instead of a hammer has a little iPod device by it. So I'll left click on that, and now it'll show me this screen. Now there we go, it's loaded, Safari. It says copyright at the bottom. If I scroll up like this is the iPad screen, it will say Hello World in the middle. That's just because it's the launch screen now. And now everywhere else is completely gone. Now again, remember, I did say you won't really see Hello World up here in the coding. You only saw it for a brief second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Xcode really quick just to show you that it did in fact work in our console. So when we first saw Hello World on our simulator, that was because the launch screen over here was the first thing to load. And when the launch screen loads, it ends up showing the application name. So for those of you that are gamers, if you have your splash screens in your games or your little company logos that pop up before the actual game starts, this is basically what the launch screen is in your application device as well as Xcode. So you saw Hello World when it popped up, but then it goes to this main.storyboard file. And right now you can see we have nothing in it but view controller. So if we wanted to take this on a further journey, this is what we could do. We could go back down to our iOS simulator. We're going to end up closing it out. And then just to give you a little bit more of a taste of what will go on in Xcode, if we go back to our file browser and we click on main.storyboard, this is what our actual controller is going to look like. This is what the screen for our iPad is going to look like. So if we want to do a second Hello World, we can go down to our object library and we can go down to label. We can left click and drag label over, and you'll notice that when you do this you will get guides to show up. And then when we put label in there, we can double click and type in Hello World right here. We can move it just to center it. And now, yet again, if I were to run this program now, I'll stop the prior running one and run this new one. It'll start building it. It'll say the build has succeeded. I can then go down to my simulator. And now my simulator will have the words Hello World at the top of it. So it's pretty nifty, pretty cool. You'll notice again that it does say Hello World here. It also has this little parentheses because of my label there, saying that I read the label. So that is the way that we would do Hello World in Xcode. Next time we're going to dive in a little bit deeper, and we'll end up looking more through the object library. We'll add a few extra little tasks and things to go on. So stay tuned.